online writing is really interesting topic in that it's really becoming its own thing. I feel there's all these platforms that are out there. There's all these mediums that are out there. There's new business models emerging. And it
Yep.
seems like Silicon Valley is becoming interested in it. You know, a lot of people are feeling like you could build a following and then launch a makeup line or launch a software product. You could build a lifelong following where you use it to build one business, but then you can also
Hmm.
use it for other businesses. Elon Musk is a perfect example. We have Substack, where you could create your own subscriptions and so on. So I guess my question for you is, how would you describe where we are right now in the online writing industry, if you want to call it that? And then what do you see as the future? What are the things about the future that you think you see that other people aren't really aware of?
Well, for one, I'd say, Silicon Valley has always been interested in it. If you think about the beginning of the internet, long before there were algorithms, people just wanted to know, how do I publish a web page? That was 1.0, and that is a form of writing online.
Right,
And
right.
so the interesting thing, and I talk about this kind of in the first chapter of the book, is like, you have to really step back and understand how we got to where we are. And one of the big things I try and point out to people is, I find so many times everyone's focused on, well, I want to start a blog, but the original definition of a blog it comes from the term web log.
Right.
And the idea was, I'm going to log like what I'm doing. It was basically as a way of like, how do I communicate bugs that I'm working on this site? And, it's like a different form of a library. That term and that mindset doesn't really apply anymore. And I think more importantly, if you look at your Facebook feed, like, or Twitter feed or whatever, every time you refresh, you're not looking at a linear feed. You're looking at, I'm showing you something that happened 30 seconds ago, and I'm showing you something that happened yesterday, and it's interspersed. There's a new way of presenting that information. So the idea of writing in a linear way, which I also find a lot of people do, they're like, I want this post to lead to this post to lead to this post. Like, that doesn't exist anymore.
Right, right.
So it's important to understand these principles that have changed, so that, if you look at the future of where I feel like we're moving is, every single thing you write both has to be able to stand entirely on its own. So if someone randomly comes across one of your however many hundred or however many thousand articles, they need to be able to read that and not need the context of the other 499
Right,
articles
right.
you've
That each
written.
post stands alone.
Each post has to stand alone, and at the exact same time, it also has to in some way make sense within the library.
Right. Yeah.
So that way, if someone reads it, right, then they get curious and they start poking around, and then they're like, oh, okay, cool, I want to read another one, I want to read another one. So when you have these things in mind, to me, the future is, you have to have both of those at the forefront, and then you have to consider what platforms are in these different stages. I don't know if you got into this part in the book, but
Yeah, I
like,
have the 5 different stages of platforms.
yeah, yeah, like, this is another big thing that people don't get, is all of these platforms they're startups, they're companies, right? And so they're in different life cycles. Sometimes the company is very young, and because they're growing and because they're throwing, they're accelerating, they're putting a bunch of capital behind their growth. If you're there at that time, you can reap a significant amount of benefit, because you're kind of in the middle of their windstorm. And so the example I use is, when I started writing on Quora in 2014, 2015, they just raised another big round. They were really trying to accelerate. They wanted their core users and their power creators to stick around. So what's going to get me to stick around? It's going to be exposure. If I write something and it's like, I just got 10,000 views on it, of course I'm going to keep writing there.
Yeah, yeah.
But then a couple years later, when they like kind of achieved their growth, their growth goals, and then they're like, we're going to launch our ad platform, then they start throttling it back. Now all of a sudden I'm not getting as much exposure. So this big thing that I explain to people is like, it's not like, hey, here's the platform, this is it, all you got to do is write here, and now for the rest of your life you're good. It's, you have to pay attention to where these platforms are in their life cycles, and what the next one is,
Right,
that
right.
you can then move your library and take full advantage of it while it's in that kind of whirlwind of a moment.